Liberty means anything at all. It means the right to tell people what they don't want to hear. That's a quote from 1984, the George Orwell book that came out in 1949 and was written in response to the encroachment of the government of the Soviet Union upon their citizens. Now, many people don't know this because it's not covered as much in history books, but the Soviet Union killed approximately 7 times as many people as the Nazis. That's not to say that both aren't disgusting and horrible. It's to make the point that government overreach killed many more people than anyone realizes. Chairman Mao in the 20th century of China killed 60 million of his own people. All of these atrocities that have happened have largely been the result of government overreach. Now, we don't think we're at risk of those sorts of things now, but that's where I think we're wrong. And that's why today I want to tell you about the ADF, or the Alliance Defending Freedom. So the ADF is a consortium of legal advocates and lawyers, volunteers, who are funded completely by donors. They are entirely nonprofit, and their only goal is to protect God-given rights, what they see as God-given rights. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, of association, the things that make the United States unique. So, just a little bit about them. They were founded back in 1994 and have grown ever since then, especially with the amount of government overreach that has gone on. So, one case that really put them on the map, according to the New Yorker, which is New York magazine, obviously, was the Masterpiece Cake Shop case, which you might be aware of or you might not. It's a little bit of an older one, but essentially there's a gentleman named Jack Phillips who had a cake shop and was also a devout Christian. And one day, 2 gentlemen came into his shop and said, "Hi, we're having a wedding and we're getting married and we'd like you to cook or bake a cake for our wedding." And Mr. Phillips declined. He said, "I'm sorry, but I'm a devout Christian man, and I believe that would be both controversial to my beliefs and could endanger my eternal salvation." These gentlemen, instead of accepting that and taking his direction to other cake shops down the street, decided to sue him in a case that went all the way before the Supreme Court. During that case, Mr. Phillips was represented by the ADF. That's not the only case that not the only case they've taken, and not their only high-profile case. It was simply the one that put them on the map because they won, and it was seen widely as a win for religious freedom. Now, you might be thinking that, Logan's a white dude that grew up in Missouri, worked in law enforcement, so he's probably deep conservative, deep Christian, and only cares about those issues. And I understand that temptation, especially with us being college students, but that's simply not true. And those aren't the only kinds of cases that the ADF take on. So, in the case of Holt v. Hobbs, they won another Supreme Court victory where a Muslim man wanted to grow a beard because it was part of his religion, but he was in prison where they had strict shaving standards. Eventually he won, and the man was allowed to grow his beard. So they are a Christian group, but they're not just in favor of Christian plaintiffs or defendants. They support free speech, freedom of religion, and freedom of association. Now, another case that they've had that's more recent and very high profile, also very Orwellian, was the case of Adam Connor. Now, in 1984, one of the terms invented by Orwell in the book that's really caught on is thought crime, wherein the government can prosecute you for having thoughts they disagree with. And that was mostly fiction for most of history. However, in 2022, Mr. Connor, who is a physiotherapist working with veterans and also a veteran of the British Army himself, who served in Afghanistan, was arrested a little bit south of London outside an abortion clinic not for disrupting women trying to get reproductive care, not for protesting, but for standing outside 150 feet away, facing away from the building, bowing his head and praying silently. Now, he wasn't praying for those women to not get abortions. He wasn't praying for the laws to change. He was praying because his son had been aborted about 20 years prior, and he felt bad about it, still does. And seeing the clinic reminded him of the guilt that he feels. Now, you might disagree with him feeling guilt over that, but I don't think any one of us could say that he doesn't have the right to feel that guilt or to do something that makes him feel better when it doesn't affect anyone else. But the police were called, he was arrested, he was taken to jail, and last October was ordered by the courts to pay the equivalent of $11,000 US for his crime. He is now being represented by the ADF, and they are appealing that decision. So why should you care? I mean, I cited one case where a Muslim man was defended, but you might say, Logan, I'm not religious, or Logan, I am a Democrat, I am an independent. I don't care about people who are against abortion. I don't care about people's religions, any of that. Well, let's take the stance that maybe you're a Democrat. So right now in Canada, Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, who is a super famous podcaster, author, and psychotherapist, is being forced to undergo government re-education for refusing to use people's preferred pronouns in his Twitter posts. Now again, if you're a Democrat, you might say, okay, that's good. He's disrespecting these people's self-identification. Why shouldn't he be punished for that? And to that I would say, and to really any dissent to these decisions, I would say, imagine the alternative. Imagine a hyper-conservative, hyper-religious government where people can be prosecuted and forced to go to re-education to keep their medical license if they choose to use someone's preferred pronouns. Imagine a statesman, a president, any overreaching government saying, you're not allowed to use preferred pronouns, this contradicts what we believe to be biological reality. So if you do that, we are going to either take away your license you worked 12 years for, or force you to go to re-education. I think we can all agree that's despicable. And I think you can apply that logic to any issue instead of a government like in the United States, where very often you can get sued and ostracized from society for advocating for LGBTQ rights. Think of nations that don't have rights for individual freedoms, like those in the Middle East. In Gaza currently, homosexual people are being thrown from rooftops, and it's supported by the ruling parties. I think it's pretty clear what happens when organizations like the ADF don't exist. If liberty